Oh, and by the way, Boehner Bronco Buster?
Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from?
Improv.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's easy to look back in history and say, this person should have been a world champion. Of course, we all have certain wrestlers that we wish could have been champions, but in reality, it's much more difficult to go back and find an actual time and place where these people winning a world title would have made sense. That's what I'm going to be doing today. 5 wrestlers who I think should have won world titles in WWE. Now, some of these wrestlers have eventually gone on to win world titles, but hopefully you guys will see what I was going for. If you grew up in the early 2010s, John Morrison was probably one of your favorite wrestlers. Morrison was just the epitome of cool, and it didn't even matter if he was a heel. We all loved him. But when would have been a good time for him to win a WWE championship? Extreme Rules 2011. Fresh off the heels of The Miz beating John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, he entered into a little feud with Morrison, and I see no reason that Morrison shouldn't have walked away with the title. I think we can all agree that The Miz's 2011 WWE Championship reign went on way too long.
Oh, that was bad, bro. Bad.
And dropping it at Extreme Rules to Morrison, it just makes sense. Morrison and Miz can have a rematch at Over the Limit with John Cena as the special guest referee. Morrison will retain, and this can then lead to John Cena facing John Morrison at Capital Punishment in a one-on-one match where Cena will beat him for the title. So what did this all accomplish? It made Morrison a WWE champion, first of all, and hopefully that turned him into an even bigger star. He had like a solid 3-month title reign, and that's 3 months that we don't have to see The Miz with the title. We also don't mess with the real timeline, as we're still on track to get John Cena versus CM Punk at Money in the Bank, which we all know that's what's really important. Next, we have Cody Rhodes, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I know that Cody is now a WWE champion, but Cody in 2011 is a completely different wrestler than the Cody we have now, and I think that he had the potential to be a world champion. I decided to have Cody win the Money in the Bank in 2011 instead of Daniel Bryan. This might worry some of you, but I really don't think it would change Bryan's career trajectory. Randy Orton will defeat Mark Henry for the World Heavyweight Championship at Hell in a Cell, which just ends Mark Henry's title reign a few months earlier. Trust me, all we're really missing out on is a few Mark Henry vs. Big Show matches. This is when Cody's going to come out and cash in his briefcase. Cody then defends the title in a fatal 4-way at Vengeance against Randy Orton, Mark Henry, and Big Show, where he's able to narrowly retain. At Survivor Series in real life, we got Team Barrett vs. Team Orton. Here we're just going to do Team Cody versus Team Orton, and the teams can stay pretty much exactly the same. This is like my main reasoning, my main point for making Cody a champion here is that it really changes nothing that happened in real life. Like I said, all we're missing out on is a few Mark Henry versus Big Show matches, and hopefully it raises Cody's, prestige a little bit. And a feud against Randy Orton, it just makes sense. He was on Team Barrett anyways. Everything that I'm saying pretty much already happened. From here, we can do pretty much whatever we want. If we want Daniel Bryan to beat Cody at the Rumble, that's fine. If we want Cody to hold the title all the way to Mania and lose to Orton or Sheamus, that's also fine. I just feel like Cody 100% could have won the title a long time ago. How Wade Barrett never won a world title is beyond me. He had everything it takes to be a top heel in any company, and today we are righting that wrong. This one is very simple. Royal Rumble 2013, Wade Barrett replaces Alberto Del Rio, and he's going to beat Big Show for the World Heavyweight Championship. Barrett is then going to defend the title in Elimination Chamber against Big Show, Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan, Del Rio, and Chris Jericho. He can then lose the title at WrestleMania against literally anyone. Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, Daniel Bryan, take your pick. Anything is better than Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger. I mean, it really boggles my mind how that was a world title match at WrestleMania, especially considering what we could have gotten instead. Drew McIntyre was the chosen one for a reason, and despite what some of his early years in WWE looked like, I think it was at least worth, taking a risk of putting a world title on him. WrestleMania 2010. Drew McIntyre is going to win the Money in the Bank instead of Jack Swagger. Screwing over Jack Swagger seems to be a common theme in this video, but I want one person to comment and tell me that they look back fondly at all of Jack Swagger's completely pointless title reigns in WWE.
Leave. I'm serious.
Chris Jericho and Edge are going to continue their WrestleMania feud into Extreme Rules, except this time it's for the title, and Jericho once again retains. Earlier in the night, Drew McIntyre is going to face Randy Orton, and he's going to lose. Jericho is going to see McIntyre lose to Orton, and he's going to decide to sort of take him under his wing, almost like a learning tree, if you will. But it's clear Jericho really just wants to keep an eye on the man with the money in the bank. I also think this is a dynamic we've never really seen before. You know, the champion trying to befriend the person who could potentially take their title away. This leads to a tag team match at Over the Limit that sees McIntyre and Jericho take on the reunited and now face team Rated RKO. Chris Jericho is then going to convince McIntyre to cash in his money in the bank on John Cena. But we all know Super Cena. He proves to be too much and beats the young McIntyre. This is finally going to send McIntyre over the edge, and he finally attacks Chris Jericho. This of course leads to a Fatal 4-Way at Fatal 4-Way, where we have the perfect setup for Chris Jericho versus Drew McIntyre versus Edge versus Randy Orton, and Jericho once again sneaks out as the winner. We're then going to have the first ever Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which sees Drew McIntyre win the briefcase again. Now, this takes away Kane's Money in the Bank win, but I honestly don't really care. I think people look back at 2010 Kane, with rose-tinted glasses, and we're really not missing out on much. Later in the same night, Jericho faces Edge, and Edge is finally able to defeat Jericho for the title, but this is when McIntyre comes out and cashes in his Money in the Bank to win the World Heavyweight Championship. We can go in a million different directions from here. McIntyre versus Jericho, McIntyre versus Edge, McIntyre versus Orton. It all makes sense. Look, maybe McIntyre flops as champion, but we'll never know if we don't take the risk, and I think that's something that WWE should have done a lot more throughout the early 2000s, 2010s. They should have taken risk and just put the title on McIntyre. What's the harm? What's the worst that could happen? Alright, lock in, because this one is going to get a little crazy. So Cesaro is going to win the Money in the Bank in 2013 instead of Damien Sandow. Look, I know we all liked Sandow at the time, but looking back, I'm glad he never won the world title, and him winning the Money in the Bank was just a complete waste. So this is going to lead to SummerSlam, where Christian is actually going to beat Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship. This is when Paul Heyman comes out and introduces Cesaro. Around this time, Heyman was managing Brock Lesnar, but he was also doing some bullshit on the side with Ryback and even Curtis Axel. I say we drop Axel, we drop Ryback, and we move Cesaro in with Heyman. Cesaro comes out and cashes in his Money in the Bank on Christian to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. I think we all know Cesaro had everything it takes to be a top guy, and all he needed was a mouthpiece. Now, with Heyman by his side, Cesaro is a real world champ. Cesaro is then going to retain his title in a triple threat match against Alberto Del Rio and Christian at Night of Champions, but he's going to be confronted after the match by CM Punk. Punk had somewhat of an ongoing feud with Heyman around this time, so this is going to lead to Battleground, where Cesaro is going to beat CM Punk, but only with the help of Paul Heyman. I don't know, Paul Heyman can hit Punk with the belt while the ref's back is turned, something like that. Now, this is very important. John Cena originally defeated Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship at Hell in a Cell, and he would go on to unify the titles at TLC. But I don't know if WWE would really need to unify the titles if we had an interesting story going on with Cesaro and CM Punk. I've never really been a fan of only one world title in WWE, because having two just gives you such an amazing opportunity to create new stars, or at least that's what it should have done. So Cesaro is going to beat Punk at Hell in a Cell, but he's only able to do it with the help of Brock Lesnar, who makes his return to WWE and helps Cesaro and Paul Heyman, creating one of the scariest factions of all time. This is going to bring us to Survivor Series, where we see Lesnar and Cesaro team up to face the team of CM Punk and John Cena. So Cena and Punk are actually going to win after Cesaro is pinned by John Cena. which might seem like kind of, burying the champion, but this is actually going to lead Cena to want to go after Cesaro. He just pinned the World Heavyweight Champion in a tag team match, so why can't he pin him in a singles match? This all leads to TLC, where Cesaro is going to face John Cena and CM Punk in a triple threat TLC match, and CM Punk is going to win. Now keep in mind, this is around the time that Punk leaves WWE in real life. But would he leave if he was champion in an important story heading into WrestleMania? I don't know, this might be extremely wishful thinking, but it's just something to think about. It's also very important to remember that none of this affects, the Daniel Bryan Yes Movement story. All we've done is elevate Cesaro, make the World Heavyweight Championship feel important again, and hopefully kept CM Punk around. Like I said, I know this is a lot of wishful thinking, but hey, who knows? And anything is better than what we got in real life with the big gold belt, Jack Swagger, Big Show, Alberto Del Rio. It was just, they really dragged down the title. And if we had guys like Cesaro, CM Punk fighting for the belt, I don't think they would have ever needed to unify them. Okay, so from here, we can go in a lot of different directions. And I actually want to book WrestleMania 30, just for fun. Everyone seems to hate Royal Rumble 2014 with a passion. So let's try to improve things a little bit. Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt are feuding, but they actually don't face each other at the Rumble. Instead, they're going to have a blow-off match on Raw, and then both men are going to enter the Rumble. The final four are Daniel Bryan, Bray Wyatt, Batista, and Roman Reigns. Roman can get eliminated first, and then Batista is eliminated by Daniel Bryan. This leaves just Bryan and Wyatt, and it looks like Bryan is finally going to get his moment, but Bray wins. Now, this might get booed in the moment, but unlike Batista's win, this is supposed to get booed, and hopefully create a top heel in the company in Bray Wyatt. Also, at least we actually put Bryan in the match, which should give fans just a little bit of hope. From this point, the Daniel Bryan story plays out exactly the same. Meanwhile, Bray Wyatt sets his eyes on CM Punk and the World Heavyweight Championship for Mania. So where does all this leave Cesaro? Well, I think there's a couple different interesting options. If we want to avoid Brock Lesnar ending the Undertaker streak, which I think is the smart call, we could do Brock versus Cesaro in, Paul Heyman on a pole match. So this is going to make our Mania 30 card look like this. Triple H versus Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton versus Batista versus Daniel Bryan, CM Punk versus Bray Wyatt, Cesaro versus Brock Lesnar, and John Cena versus The Undertaker.